Over 11 million Australians had their most personal information compromised by a mysterious hacker while demanding a $1 million ransom to Australia's second largest telco. This then had further impacts, causing thousands of Australians to get new passports, clogging up the passport office, people committing blackmail with the data, and even Australia's parliament passing new laws in the wake of this cyber disaster. Then, the mysterious threat actor who performed such a basic attack to get the data was so inexperienced and freaked out days later. This is the story of the Optus data breach of 2022. On the 22nd of September 2022, a threat actor known only as the name Optus Data posted on the notorious website breached.io that they had acquired a large sample of personal information from Optus. This included names, phone numbers, driver's license numbers, and even passport numbers. Initially, they leaked the details of 100 people and eventually 10,200 people, while demanding a $1 million ransom. Within hours, this story was already on the headline of every major Australian news network.
Good evening. Phone numbers, email addresses, dates of birth, even passport details. A cyber attack against telecommunications giant Optus.
Optus customers. Who is responsible for a major hack on telco giant Optus?
Optus is Australia's second largest telco, founded in 1981 and then sold to Singapore-based Singtel in 2004. But maintained its branding and onshore operations. So how did all this just happen? Well, currently we only have clues based on the post made by Optus Data on breached.io, as well as Optus employees anonymously talking to the media. So right now, this is only speculation, but it does seem to be the widely accepted narrative. So for this attack to occur, it seems like there were 3 key failures, and all of which were from a test build of an application. The first failure was a test application being exposed to the internet. When software is being built, the live application or website is not being updated in real time, and instead a clone is made in order to develop and test the upgrades. Simply put, this is called an environment, and often they're exposed to the internet so testers can test the new features and report on bugs. This is common yet bad practice, but the breach wouldn't have happened without the second failure. The test environment lacked any authentication, so a user who found the environment on the internet could exfiltrate any data simply by figuring out the API calls. Think of API calls as messages that are sent between your browser and a website, or even between 2 websites. But this still wouldn't have resulted in the breach unless we had the third failure. The data in the test environment was either a copy of the live dataset or was connected to the live dataset. This was not dummy data, it was real. Again, this is common yet bad practice and often accepted by internal security teams. So, to recap, the test environment was accessible to the internet. The environment had no authentication, and the environment had production data in it or was linked to a production database. These 3 failures aligned so perfectly that when Optus Data found the environment, they could easily get all of the data. To highlight how simple this was, a savvy high school student could pull off this attack.
We are very confident that this was a sophisticated attack.
Once again, if our assumptions about the attack are correct, then no, this was not a sophisticated attack. The sophisticated threat actor is typically an excuse used by executives to try to shift the blame. However, to their credit, they were quick to address it and to bring in Deloitte and Mandiant to perform the digital forensics and incident response, as well as working with the AFP, the ACSC, and even the FBI due to the impact of some US citizens with Optus accounts. Optus made a promise to release their findings when available. However, still to date, they strongly deny the breach was caused by any human error. So how did it all go down when it was leaked? On the 22nd of September, Optus announced on their own website that they believed there may have been a data breach, and they were still assessing the damage and the impact. Meanwhile, the user Optus Data had signed up to the breach.io forums to post this thread. The hacker claimed to have over 11 million records of Optus customers, which included all their personal identifiable information, including driver's license and passport. The data was verified by the site owner, saying that it all appeared legitimate. The hacker then leaked a sample 100 records to show publicly that the information was legitimate, and then demanded the $1 million ransom to be paid in Monero, which is a cryptocurrency, all within 7 days. They also offered the data for sale to anybody else for $350,000 for the entire set. A short while later, they increased the total records exposed to 10,200. The hacker also demanded that all communications were to occur on the breach.io site, which was a strange indicator that the hacker may not be a sophisticated threat actor and perhaps just a script kiddie. Within several hours, Australian news outlets broke the story. The CEO, Kelly Bayer Rosmarin, also released an emotional press release video addressing the breach and the impacts to the Optus customers, both current and former.
Obviously, I'm angry that there are people out there that want to do this to our customers. I'm disappointed that we couldn't have prevented it. I'm very sorry and apologetic. It should not have happened.
So what does this really mean? Well, about 11 million people had their identity information exposed, 20% of which contained identity document numbers. While it's almost like we're becoming desensitized to the idea that our data is now floating about in cyberspace, various breaches and tech giants knowing so much about us already, and while I certainly don't want to cause panic, this lax attitude can have some severe impacts. Within this breach, the impacts are in the realm of identity theft and further social engineering attacks. To give you an idea of what this actually means, somebody could have a false paper trail against you with your identity, which could include a car rental, tollways, or even rental of heavy machinery. One could also open a bank account and take out loans in your name, of which the impacts may go undetected for several years until the debt collectors come knocking. And we also have social engineering attacks that could be leveraged with knowing more about their target, and while we all like to think we can spot them, clever attackers can still breach the trust of even the most skeptical person to hand over their information and/or money. Within the first 2 weeks, when the information was scarce and the impacts yet to fully be determined, thousands had to get their passports reissued, and some were even at risk of missing their flights due to the last-minute change of their passport details. One Sydney man named Dennis Sue had allegedly used the data from the Optus breach to attempt to blackmail 92 people using his own personal phone number and his brother's bank account. He would blackmail the victims through text message and try to get them to pay $2,000, but obviously left a very traceable paper trail directly back to him. One victim replied to the message, quote, "The police have your details and I have nothing you can gain. Good luck." The Australian police arrested Sue within days, and he pled guilty to the charges and will face sentencing in February. In the wake of this attack, as well as other high-profile attacks on Australian organisations, the Australian Parliament passed revisions to a bill, increasing the fine from a data breach from a maximum of 2.2 million Australian dollars to 50 million Australian dollars. So who was Optus Data? Well, there's still very little known about who Optus Data really is, and if they're part of a larger threat actor group. Typically, attribution is difficult, but it can be discovered through the types of techniques, tactics, and protocols used within the breach, as well as where they're trying to send the money to, as well as IP addresses. So far, nothing has been made public to date, which reveals any of this information. Current best guesses at this stage appear to be a lone actor who identified this vulnerability and tried to make a quick buck. 5 days after the breach, on the 27th of September, Optus Data posted again on breach.io to make this announcement. Too many eyes. We will not sell data to anybody. We can't even if we wanted to. Personally deleted data from Drive, only copy. Sorry to 10,200 Australians whose data was leaked. Australia will see no gain in fraud. This can be monitored. Maybe for 10,200 Australians, but rest of population no. Very sorry to you all. Deepest apology to Optus for this. Hope all goes well from this. Optus, if you are reading, we would have reported exploit if you had method of contact. No security mail, no bug bounties, no way to message. Ransom not paid, but we don't care anymore. Was mistake to scrape and publish data in first place. The post naturally led to a lot of speculation, specifically about Optus quietly paying the ransom, a claim which they strongly deny. Others suggest that the hacker involved had lacked any experience in the commercial side of performing a data breach and quit while they were ahead in efforts not to get caught. Given the operation of this threat actor compared to what we've seen elsewhere, this could be quite possible. However, I have strong doubts that information has been deleted and not shared with anybody else. So what can we all learn? It's become apparent that working in technology is starting to become a high-risk industry. One small, very human mistake can lead to serious consequences, especially when the mistakes line up so perfectly. We must not only have, but actually use safeguards to ensure these measures are contained or avoided altogether. Therefore, we need to shift our mindset from if an attack were to occur to when, because it can only take one uncaught mistake. This does raise questions with the new bill passed by the Australian government, and while organisations must treat our data with the utmost care, and the fine should be not seen as the cost of doing business, it is, I believe, in the opposite direction of how the industry is shifting. We'll have to wait and see what happens in the next data breach. What do you think? So Optus really was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cybercrime in Australia. As it affected members of the general public, it had a heightened public awareness. However, cybercrime can go undetected for quite some time to monitor people's activity. Click here to find out how Chinese hackers infiltrated an Australian university to spy on their students.